"You're fired unless you apologize to my son." Arthur's voice thundered across the boardroom like a shotgun blast in a funeral parlor. The only thing louder was the silence that followed it. Every executive at the table froze, coffee cups halfway to their lips, eyes darting between me and Arthur like they'd just witnessed a man punch a nun. I didn't flinch. I didn't speak. I simply closed my leather binder, slow and deliberate, like sealing a coffin lid. Josh, the son in question, Arthur's pride and underperforming joy, was already red in the face, fiddling with his pen like it might unlock the intelligence he never inherited. He was 29 going on lawsuit. 2 weeks earlier, he bungled a pitch so badly we lost $1 million client. I said so plainly, and in front of the board after years of covering for him. That was my crime, honesty. After 15 years of being the firewall between his incompetence and the company's reputation, I told the truth. One sentence. This is what happens when nepotism meets responsibility, and that was enough to snap Arthur's leash. He stood up like he was starring in a courtroom drama, nostrils flaring, veins throbbing in his neck. "You're fired unless you apologize to my son. Not we need to discuss this. Not let's talk after. Just an ultimatum." Like I was some receptionist who lost a dry cleaning receipt, not the woman who co-built this company out of nothing but late nights, broken printers, and pure rage-fueled logistics. Not the woman who had written the framework their entire platform was running on. I looked around the table. The CFO shifted uncomfortably in his seat. The general counsel blinked like a deer in a Tesla's headlights. Half the room thought this was a marital spat. The other half didn't want to get caught in the crossfire. But nobody said a word, so I said it for them. "Okay, not fine, not let's talk later, just okay." I closed my binder. I adjusted my blazer. And I walked out of the room, slow and steady, heels clicking against the marble like a damn metronome. For every woman who kept the receipts, stayed quiet too long, and built something they'd never understand, this one's for you. And if you're listening right now and haven't hit that subscribe button or liked the story, well, it's the easiest way to tell the algorithm you want more women torching the systems built to erase them. And hey, it really does help the team. Thanks. Anyway, Arthur didn't follow me, didn't call my name. He just stood there like a man who thought he won a battle and hadn't noticed the landmine under his feet. That boardroom, it wasn't a battlefield, it was a graveyard. He'd just buried the company next to his dignity. By the time I got to the elevator, I had already texted my lawyer. By the time the elevator hit the lobby, the resignation letter was drafted, backdated, bulletproof, and armed with every clause I'd spent years quietly embedding into our operating agreements. See, Arthur had the name. Arthur had the legacy, but I had the code, I had the trust. I had the licensing rights tucked away inside a folder marked B. Lyman Holdings, my maiden name, and I had just pulled the pin. No tears, no theatrics, just execution. Because when Arthur picked his son, I picked the foundation he never bothered to read. And the best part? I didn't need to burn the building down. He already lit the match. I just left the windows open. The house was dark by the time I parked in the driveway. Arthur's car was already there, crooked in the spot like always, as if even parallel lines were beneath him. I didn't go inside right away. Just sat there, gripping the steering wheel, staring at the porch light flickering like it had second thoughts. That boardroom scene kept looping in my head, but not the yelling. Not even Josh's smug face. No, the sound that stuck with me was the way no one said anything after. Like watching someone fall off a boat and turning away because you didn't want to be responsible for the splash. Inside, Arthur was on the couch, sipping scotch and watching something loud and stupid. He glanced at me but didn't speak. He thought it was over. Thought I'd sulk, maybe bake banana bread, maybe sulk some more. Instead, I walked past him, grabbed the leather briefcase from the hallway closet, and went upstairs to my office. Resignation isn't a decision. It's an execution. A final keystroke in a code you started writing years ago. The resignation letter took exactly 27 minutes. Not because I rushed it, but because it was already half-written. Not the words, but the plan. I'd been tightening the screws for years, quietly refining our licensing terms, embedding ownership triggers in the trust, carving legal escape routes that required neither permission nor forgiveness. All it needed was one date. Not today's, but last Thursday's. The day Arthur's son signed off on that botched client migration. It was his error, and I knew he'd never admit it. That was the day I mentally stepped away. And now, legally, so would everything else I owned. The clause wasn't public. It wasn't buried either. Just quiet. A dusty paragraph in a license agreement that tied operational rights to active engagement by the Origin Trust representative. If that rep resigned, without a renewal signed, it terminated all usage rights within 48 hours. I was that rep. I hadn't signed a renewal in 5 years. The email to my lawyer went out at 12:03 a.m. Attached, my signed resignation, timestamped, notarized, and backdated to Thursday. I didn't include a message. She'd know what it meant. Then I printed 2 copies, one for Arthur, one for the board, folded clean, slid into envelopes with that specific kind of finality reserved for wills and lawsuits. After that, I opened my old burner phone, one I hadn't used since the patent conference in DC, and scrolled down to a contact saved under TC. No message, just a location pin and a single period. Then I powered it off and dropped it in the drawer. This wasn't emotional. This wasn't revenge. This was composure sharpened into strategy. And somewhere deep in my chest, where the betrayal used to boil, I felt something new settle in: silence, not numbness. Just the kind of peace that comes when there's nothing left to say. I didn't need him to understand. I didn't need them to apologize. They'd made their choice. Now they'd live with it, or more accurately, without it. Because when your entire tech stack runs on the brain of the woman you publicly humiliated, you better pray she's still emotionally invested. I wasn't. And by sunrise, neither was the company. Arthur was already on his second cup of coffee when I walked into the kitchen. He had that smug, post-blow-up calm about him, the kind that only comes from decades of never facing consequences. Eggs, toast, the newspaper open to the business section like nothing had happened, like he hadn't screamed at me in front of the boardroom, like I hadn't walked out without a word. Morning, he chirped, not looking up. I didn't reply. He sipped his coffee with a satisfied sigh. So, ready to beg, I poured myself a cup. No milk, no sugar, just black. Hot and bitter, like the marriage. I left the keys on the desk, I said evenly, and took a seat across from him. He finally looked up. What? The office keys. Laptop too. Resignation letters on your desk. He chuckled. Not laughed, chuckled. That patronizing, dismissive sound he always used when someone beneath him tried to assert something he didn't think they were entitled to. Barbara, he said, dragging the like he was tasting it, that's not how this works. You don't just storm out and quit. That's not real. That's not legal. That's just a tantrum. I took a slow sip of coffee and looked at him like the man he was, not my husband, not my business partner, just a man whose arrogance had finally outpaced his luck. I didn't storm out, I said. I executed an exit. He frowned, now mildly irritated. An exit from what? From the illusion, Arthur. From the illusion that I was ever just a co-founder with good instincts. From the lie that you were the genius and I was the support. From the marriage, technically, but more importantly, from your legacy. Because the moment he'd made it about his son, I made it about my work. He stood, slamming his coffee down, splashing it across the table. You're being dramatic. I opened my phone, quietly checked the timestamp. 8:11 a.m. On cue, the front door burst open without so much as a knock. It was Gregory, the board chairman, usually calm. Impeccable hair, voice like a cruise ship captain narrating a storm. But now, pale, sweating through his collar, paper in hand, he didn't even look at me. His eyes were locked on Arthur like he'd just discovered they were both strapped to the same sinking ship. Arthur, he barked, tell me this is a joke. Arthur blinked. What? Gregory waved the resignation letter. Is this real? Yes, it's real, Arthur scoffed, clearly trying to regain control of a conversation he didn't understand. Barbara's being emotional. She'll come around. Gregory stepped in closer, handshaking. You don't understand. This letter activated Clause 12 of the licensing agreement. We've already lost back-end access. The dev environment is offline. Every system endpoint tied to her trust just returned a 403 denial. Arthur turned to me slowly, like he was finally seeing me not as a wife, but as a threat. What the hell did you do? I took another sip. You signed the papers, Arthur. You demanded the apology. You got the outcome. He looked like a man watching a building collapse that he thought was earthquake-proof. Gregory was pacing now. The core tech, the IP, we don't own it, Arthur. It's licensed through Barbara's trust, and she just severed that license. No, Arthur stammered. That can't be. We merged everything when we incorporated. No, I cut in calmly. We licensed it. I kept it separate. You insisted I fold it in under the trust for tax purposes, remember? He looked like he didn't remember a damn thing, but the signature on the licensing contract said otherwise. His, next to mine, with our lawyer's initials confirming it was valid. Gregory held out his phone. Legal's already on the line. They say we have less than 48 hours before client contracts start triggering penalties, and our largest account already called. Their data interface locked out overnight. They're threatening to walk. Arthur stumbled back into his chair like the weight of his own ignorance had finally landed. I just finished my coffee and rinsed the cup in the sink. He thought he held the power because he built a last name into the letterhead. But the code was mine. And now, so was the silence. By noon, the foundation started to crack. And by 3 p.m., it wasn't cracks, it was landslides. The first major client to notice was Lexington Healthcare. Their integration portal went dark just after lunch. Their CTO tried rebooting their API key, got a denial message, unauthorized licensor. 2 calls to Arthur, one ignored, one answered with a vague promise to escalate to tech. Except there was no tech to escalate to. The system didn't need rebooting, it needed permission, and I had revoked it. Arthur's son Josh, oh bless him, decided to handle it himself. Posted on the internal Slack channel, minor licensing hiccup. ETA to resolution, 2 hours. He really thought he could PR his way through an IP blackout. By 4 p.m., our entire backend was inaccessible to every enterprise-level client. Internal systems reverted to sandbox mode. Dashboards froze mid-refresh. Customer support started getting slammed with urgent tickets marked contract violation service interruption. And somewhere inside that tornado of panic, someone must have finally opened the license agreement and actually read Clause 12. Upon resignation of the original licensor, in absence of a renewed licensing instrument, all rights, access, and use privileges revert to trust administrator and shall cease without prior notice. That administrator, me. The legal team began parsing every document I'd ever authored. Dozens of emails, contracts, meeting minutes. We're looking for loopholes, language errors, anything to say this doesn't count. But I wrote those clauses the way you bolt down a safe. I didn't need to hide it. I just needed to make it boring enough that no one noticed. Off-site, I watched the implosion unfold in silence. I wasn't gloating. I wasn't even celebrating. Truth is, my hands were shaking while I held my tea, because even though this was justice, it still felt like a funeral. I built that company with love once, with grit, with 10,000 unpaid hours and a vision duct taped together with coffee-fueled madness. I watched our first prototype crash in a hotel lobby. I remember the night we signed our first client on the hood of Arthur's car. There had been laughter, hope, dreams stacked taller than the server racks we couldn't afford. But then the rot crept in, one unchecked ego at a time, and the saddest part, it didn't have to end like this. They chose him. They chose Arthur's legacy over my labor. They looked at my contributions and saw convenience, disposable competence, background music to Arthur's solo act. Well, the music had stopped. I watched the Slack logs in real time. Someone posted, "Can someone get Barbara on the line?" That got flagged and deleted. Then reposted in a private dev channel. Then again in legal. They were panicking, scrambling to reverse engineer access. But the lockout wasn't just technical, it was contractual. And I wasn't coming back. Around 5 p.m., my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I let it ring. It buzzed again, voicemail. Then a text, "Still have your whiteboard sketches from the old days. You were always 5 steps ahead. If you're building again, I'm in." JT James Thompson, our original COO. Fired 3 years ago when Arthur decided he was too risk-averse for modern growth, which is code for too ethical to lie on investor calls. 5 minutes later, another text. "I don't blame you. We saw it happening and didn't stop it. If there's a second chapter, I want in." Mina, senior developer, the one who restructured our cloud platform from scratch, the one Josh once called overly sensitive because she objected to his jokes about women in tech. I stared at the screen for a long time. Rage simmered, not at them, at myself, for staying so long, for hoping it could be fixed, for letting them convince me that being necessary was the same as being valued. But that feeling, being wanted again by the right people for the right reasons, it didn't feel like revenge. It felt like return. And for the first time in years, I let myself smile. Not wide, not smug. Just enough to remind myself I didn't destroy the company. I just took myself out of it. And everything I'd built followed. Before the boardrooms, before the binders, before the marriage, there was a studio apartment with beige carpet that smelled like microwaved leftovers and ambition. I was 26, living off ramen and resentment, juggling a job fixing back-end spaghetti code for a failing CRM company by day and building something real at night. No marketing plan, no business model, just code, pure and unfiltered. Logic engine designed to adapt to shifting data environments without breaking the user interface. It wasn't sexy, but it was damn near bulletproof. I named it Marlin, not after the fish, after my father, the only man who ever taught me how to fix something before it broke. Arthur came in later, when the code was already breathing on its own. We met at a tech mixer. He had a last name people recognized, a clean suit, and enough confidence to fill the room twice over. He didn't understand a line of code, but he understood what it could sell for, said he'd take care of the business side if I kept building. I didn't fall for him. I fell for the idea of scaling what I built. Before the incorporation, I did one thing Arthur never knew how to undo. I created a trust. B.R. Lyman Holdings, set up under my maiden name. Quiet, registered out of Delaware. Masked under legal layers so clean even the IRS would yawn reading it. And then I called the only person from law school I still trusted, Evelyn Ramirez. She'd gone corporate, now GC at a Fortune 500, but still answered when I called. "Help me write this," I told her. "Not for protection, for permanence." Together, we drafted the licensing agreement. The company, our future company, would license the software, not own it. That license would be conditional, auto-renewing only if I remained active in the business or signed an annual renewal. Arthur signed the papers with a grin. "You're the brains," he said. "I'm just here to sell it." He never read the clause. He never asked what trust-controlled IP really meant, and I never reminded him. Because even then, I knew the game, knew how men like him operated when the market turned or the spotlight dimmed, knew how easy it would be to become the wife, the helper, the emotional support coder. So I built the contract like I built the platform, not for elegance but endurance. I wasn't building a marriage, I was building a firewall, and now that firewall had done its job. At 8:43 a.m., my lawyer's assistant sent me an automated confirmation. The new holding company, Lyman Insight Group, LLC, was officially recognized as the sole active licensor of the Marlin platform. Same code, same DNA, new skin. I clicked the link and scrolled through the confirmation details. EIN, trust signatories, digital license handoff. It was done. There was no going back. The software didn't belong to the company anymore. It never did. It belonged to the woman who wrote it, who buried it beneath 3 layers of legal ice, and who just unearthed it when they pushed her out of her own home. Arthur still didn't get it. He still thought I had left in a storm of emotion, that I'd gotten hurt, that I'd wake up one day with guilt and nostalgia and ask for a seat at the table again. But I never wanted the table. I wanted the floor beneath it. And now, it was mine. Every line of code, every clause, every client contract that depended on the thing he never understood but took credit for. I held it all, and the best part? The expiration notice they all received didn't even come from me. It came from Lyman Insight Group with a legal watermark and a cheerful subject line. License access terminated, thank you for your partnership. Their panic wasn't my revenge. It was just the natural consequence of not reading the fine print, which, incidentally, was written in my voice. Arthur's first mistake was assuming the board would back him like always. His second was thinking I hadn't planned for every contingency before I walked out. The morning after the resignation letter detonated across the C-suite, Arthur made his grand gesture. He barged into legal, 2 buttons undone, tie askew, pure panic barely camouflaged as bravado, and demanded my resignation be rescinded due to emotional duress. His words, not mine. Barbara's not thinking clearly, he argued to the company's general counsel, waving a manila folder like it was proof of divine right. She's making impulsive decisions. It's a marital issue, not a business decision. The legal team, already swimming in NDAs and breach flags, stared at him like he was a malfunctioning Roomba. One finally spoke. It was notarized, filed through external counsel, dated strategically. There's no legal path to reversal. Arthur blinked. What about the board, sir? They've scheduled a session without you. This afternoon. That was the moment the floor shifted beneath him. It got worse when Horizon Systems, our largest client by revenue, sent a formal notice of non-renewal. Their CTO's email was short and deadly. Effective immediately, our engagement is suspended due to unresolved platform instability. Per Clause 9B, we are terminating without penalty. $9 million. Gone. And that wasn't a bluff. I'd spoken to Horizon's VP of Product last week. Quietly, professionally, they asked what my plans were. I told them to wait 3 days before making any decisions. They did, now they were gone. Josh tried to spin it in the weekly stand-up. There's a systems migration issue that's being worked on. No need for panic. The internal Slack exploded within 30 minutes. Engineers begging for access, client success leads scrambling to reschedule demos, ops flagging vendor alerts. Josh's name was attached to 5 Firestorm threads. Someone dropped a meme, a dumpster on fire with the caption Josh's DevOps strategy. Arthur tried damage control. He called investors, left voicemails, begged Gregory, the board chair, for vote delay. Nothing stuck, and me? I was in a cafe across town, sipping matcha, scanning a menu I didn't really care about when my phone buzzed. It was a name I hadn't seen in years, Alina Caldwell, CEO of Symmetra Analytics, a woman who once told me to get back to her when I wasn't acting like Arthur's assistant. I tapped the message. Heard you're free. If you're back in the game, I want a meeting. Let's talk off the record. I didn't smile, didn't feel triumphant, just steady, because this wasn't joy, it wasn't victory. It was something cleaner, something colder, like the click of a lock finally sliding into place. Power doesn't feel like lightning, it feels like silence. It wasn't about revenge anymore. That was too small, this was reclamation, and even that I wasn't doing alone. 1 hour later I got a ping from Mina, the senior developer who texted earlier, and another from James Thompson. Both had accepted board seats at Lyman Insight Group, along with 3 others, Camille from UX, Eric from Compliance, and Curran from Customer Ops. All of them overlooked, all of them brilliant, all of them trained by me. Promoted too late or not at all. I had signed over operational control to them last week, put my name in the founder line, but gave them the wheel because I didn't need to run it. I just needed to make sure it ran right, and judging by the storm cloud gathering over Arthur's kingdom, it was already too late for him to catch up. The land he thought he owned, it had already shifted, and I wasn't waiting for him to notice the quake. It already built somewhere new. Arthur finally reached out 3 days after the resignation detonated like a depth charge under his empire. He didn't call, of course. He had his assistant email my attorney to explore options for reconciliation. The wording was classic Arthur, stiff, insincere, and completely unaware of how far the train had already derailed. My attorney forwarded it to me with a single subject line. You were right. He's spiraling. I didn't respond. An hour later, a courier showed up at my home with a thin envelope. Inside, a handwritten note on company letterhead. He'd used the old template I'd designed, and a check. 7 zeros, a buyout offer. Retroactive IP transfer. NDA included, of course. The note read, let's put this behind us. You'll be credited as founding architect and receive full legacy participation. I want to fix this. Arthur, fix this. Man thought he could buy back the foundation after bulldozing the house. And worse, he thought I'd want to be credited, like a ghost on the Wikipedia page of something I bled for. I took a photo of the check, folded the note, and slid them both back into the envelope. Didn't even bother writing a reply. I knew what was coming next, and I knew it would hurt him more than 1,000 rejections ever could. It started with Meridian Logistics, then Verta Farm, and Altura Capital. 3 of our, their top 5 clients. All enterprise, all long-term contracts. All newly signed in secret with Lyman Insight Group, my company, or rather, the company I launched and then handed off like a loaded scalpel to the team that knew how to use it. Arthur found out during his Monday morning strategy call when someone from sales casually mentioned they'd heard from a contact at Verta Farm that the renewal wasn't happening, that they'd pivoted platforms. When he demanded to know what the hell that meant, he was met with silence, and then a name. Mine. He stormed into the marketing bullpen, shouting about client poaching and legal recourse. By then, it was too late. Their contracts were airtight. Lyman Insight Group wasn't a splinter startup, it was the spine. A continuation of the architecture I had laid brick by digital brick. The clients weren't defecting. They were following the creator of the very thing they paid for. And just when Arthur thought he'd hit the bottom, he turned to find 2 seats in his weekly senior staff sink were empty. Mina, gone. Eric, gone. Both now listed as executive partners on the Lyman Insight leadership page, grinning next to James Thompson under a clean, minimalist banner that read, "Engineered for those who actually built it." I didn't need to make a statement. I was the statement. They tried to replace me with lineage. I replaced them with legacy. This wasn't some scorched earth tantrum. I hadn't lit a match and watched the company burn. That would have been easy. Obvious, no, what I did was harder. I extracted the soul. I took the product, the vision, the people who gave a damn. I surgically removed the beating heart of a company that had forgotten who gave it life. And I left the husk. Now Arthur was left running a shell of a business, no software rights, no trusted developers, no future pipeline, and he was just starting to realize how little of it he ever actually owned. He didn't lose the company because I left. He lost it because he never understood where it came from in the first place. Satisfaction didn't feel loud. It didn't feel hot. It felt like sitting in a quiet room, watching the horizon rise exactly where you'd predicted it would. And knowing no one could stop the sun this time. Emergency board meeting was scheduled for Friday at 10 o'clock a.m. I knew before Arthur did. Gregory, the chairman, had called it privately off calendar under the guise of performance review. No press release, no warning. Just a roomful of people who'd finally sobered up from the long, drunken delusion that Arthur was the future of anything. He walked in that morning like it was any other day, same tailored jacket, same half-smirk like he'd already won. But the moment he saw the legal counsel present, his face twitched. Just a flicker, like a man realizing too late that the water's too still for swimming. The board had seen enough. They'd seen the client exodus, the licensing collapse, the leadership drain. They'd seen 3/4 of projected revenue vanish in the span of a week and watched their emails fill with investor panic. But most of all, they saw what wasn't there anymore. What had been keeping everything afloat this whole time. Me. They held the vote fast, unanimous, no abstentions. Arthur tried to object, said it was reactionary, temporary turbulence, even threw in the phrase female hysteria before Gregory cut him off mid-sentence and told him to leave the room. By 11:06 a.m., Arthur was no longer CEO. The company that once bore his name was now led by an interim team of people who used to be too afraid to speak up. Legal was already drafting transition documents by lunch. And me? I was in my home office, barefoot, sipping lukewarm tea when my phone buzzed. Voicemail, Gregory. His voice was lower than usual. Slower, no preamble. "Barbara, I don't expect a response. But I owe you this. We didn't know how much of the company was really you. I think some of us suspected. But we never really saw it, until it was gone. I'm sorry. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. I listened to it twice. Then deleted it, because apologies after the fire don't unburn anything." By that afternoon, Lyman Insight Group quietly launched its own platform. No fanfare, no media blitz. Just a subtle LinkedIn post with a video showing the dashboard interface, sleeker, cleaner, more intuitive. The same bones as the original platform, just without the weight of ego dragging it down. Early adopters flooded in. Clients who'd been waiting in the wings. Former partners who'd hesitated before but were now first in line. It wasn't hype. It was gravity. The kind of momentum you earn by doing the damn work while someone else steals the microphone. Mina handled the press kit. Eric polished the UX demo. James reached out to mid-tier clients we used to ignore. The machine was running, and I didn't even have to touch the gears. I had built something, yes. But more than that, I'd built builders. Arthur, meanwhile, was left with a nameplate and a memory. The company still existed on paper, but without the code, without the clients, without the culture, it was a shell. A mausoleum of bad decisions, decorated with portraits of nepotism and hubris. There were no parades, no champagne. I didn't post a victory selfie or tweet some cryptic quote about karma, because I wasn't building this to be seen. I was building it because it should have been built this way from the start. This wasn't vindication for me. It was restoration for the thing I created. I didn't need them to say I was right. I just needed to make it undeniable. They gave Arthur the closing keynote. Some legacy award nonsense. Visionary Founders Panel, or some equally bloated title no one questioned because half the attendees assumed the old guard still ran things. The event hall was polished and sterile, the kind of tech conference where the coffee's bitter, the lanyards cost more than someone's rent, and every panelist talks like they invented the concept of cloud storage. I wasn't on the guest list. I didn't need to be. I walked in 15 minutes before the final talk, flashed a badge that hadn't been deactivated yet, and made my way to the back of the room. No entourage, no fanfare, just me and a bottle of water. Arthur took the stage with the same swagger he used to walk into our morning stand-ups. Pressed suit, open collar, rehearsed smile that didn't quite meet his eyes anymore. The screen behind him pulsed with the company logo, still the same stale branding I designed 10 years ago, and they never updated. "Thank you for having me," he said. "It's been a turbulent year, but we've remained committed to innovation. Today, I'm excited to share a sneak peek at what we're calling the next evolution of our core platform." The irony didn't even sting. He launched into the demo like he always had, high-level fluff, big buzzwords, nothing concrete. Then he turned toward the massive projection screen and said, "Let's bring up the system." He clicked the remote. Nothing. Click, click. Then the screen flickered, once, twice. And then the words appeared in bold white text on a black background, license revoked. Owner B.R. Lyman Group, access terminated. The room gasped. It wasn't a tech failure. It was a statement. Arthur froze mid-sentence, mouth slightly open, pointer still in hand like a magician caught halfway through a trick with no rabbit and no hat. Whispers rippled through the crowd. Phones came up. Someone in the front row quietly closed their laptop and walked out. No applause, no questions, just the sound of realization setting in like cold water down the spine. And me? I sipped my water, no smile, no dramatic nod, just calm. The AV team looked panicked. A man with a headset ran toward the side of the stage, mouthing we lost the feed. Arthur still hadn't moved. Like he thought the screen might change its mind if he just stared hard enough. But that was the final move. Not revenge, not retaliation, just reality. I left before they pulled the plug. No need to linger. He'd learn in the minutes and hours that followed just how thoroughly we'd severed every root he thought was still growing. The product he tried to show wasn't just outdated, it was locked. The license had never been renewed. The keys weren't his anymore. They were mine, no ours, my team, my code, my terms, and now my silence. As I stepped out into the crisp air and away from the noise, my voice played only in my head. Not out loud. Just a whisper meant for myself and maybe the few who'd ever doubted. I didn't burn the bridge. A pause. I own the land it was built on. You're the real MVPs of the office jungle. Thanks for watching. Smash that subscribe button, or the coffee pot might just forget your next brew.